Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for coming back to my YouTube channel and clicking on today's video. If you have been doing carnivore or keto and you still have digestive issues like diarrhea or constipation or burping, right? This is a video for you. This is something that we don't talk about enough, I think, in this space. We talk so much about the healing properties of these diets, but we don't talk about people who come into these diets perhaps with low stomach acid or lacking the specific enzymes that are needed to digest and absorb these foods. And while these diets can be extremely helpful to help people start absorbing more nutrients, we often need some support. So in this video, Steve Wright is my guest. He talks about his own personal story with IBS, where he basically almost lost his job because his IBS was so incredibly severe, and what he has done, his healing journey in order to heal severe food intolerances, IBS. Yes, he did use an elimination diet, but some other things that he has done. So the purpose of this video is to help you guys and continue to give you more resources on your healing journey. And if, again, you have been doing keto, carnivore, one of these diets for a while, and you are still having issues, I really think that this video could be very helpful for you. So please let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or any other resources that you'd like me to explore, and I will talk with you guys again soon. Thanks. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning back in. I'm very excited about my guest today. His name is Steve Wright. I'm going to let him talk a little bit more in depth about his story, but I know a lot of you guys that are coming to the carnivore diet have a lot of food intolerances, and then you come to the carnivore diet and it's like, you can't digest the meat. Some of you have gallbladder issues, and we just come across this array of issues that really, I feel like Stephen has a lot of expertise in this field. So that's why I brought him here. But Stephen, thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind just introducing my audience to yourself and talking a little bit about your story.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And thanks for listening to this podcast. Man, I mean, we could spend a whole, 90 minutes just on on the like $400,000 I've spent. And I started on my journey back in 2009 before the internet and podcasts were a thing. So yeah, I mean, I was a typical person in this industry where I was overweight, acne, having panic attacks. But meanwhile, I'd been having IBS issues, alternating
Mm.
constipation, diarrhea, and bloating for a while, and it started to affect my work and my dating life. And so I almost got fired basically because I was farting so much, and I would like almost cry after every meal. I had the bloating so
Oh,
bad. Um, and I came from Michigan where, boys don't cry and we always suck it up. And so I thought that, based on what the Western medical doctors said, that this is genetics and I should just eat more whole grains to suffer through it. But then it started affecting essentially everything. And I had more accidents and all kinds of embarrassing stories. And that's when I think broke. Like I think there's an emotional break point for most people who go into changing their life, their health, taking charge of
mhm.
it. And I broke one night just being up all night having diarrhea. And I was like, I'm going to figure this out. Like, I can't be the only one who suffered like this, and someone has to have found a way through this. And so I started on a specific carbohydrate diet, which is a type of elimination diet that started back in the 20s at Vanderbilt for celiac children. Back then, if you were born with celiac, most times you died, unfortunately. But it's a version of an elimination diet that's no processed food, basically removes as much carbohydrate as possible down to the simple carbohydrates. And I immediately almost saw, I don't know, 60 to 80% of my bloating gone in like 3 days. And I was hooked. I was like, holy cow. And I was so angry. Like, how could just changing what I eat. I mean, I don't like doing it, right? I gotta like prep all my meals, and like I'm a consultant in Chicago, like supposed to be taking clients out for, burgers and beers. And so this is not what I want to be doing with my life. But, I just had so many issues that I had to do something. And when I noticed this, I was just like, I'm hooked. I have to figure this out. And so we started our company back then. It was called SCD Lifestyle. A few months later, it's now healthygut.com. And so, yeah, it's just been a over 10-year journey, 12 years, I guess, of digestive health, and just asking the question, why? Like, okay, why does nutrition change my digestion overnight? Why isn't my acne gone? Why is my energy still low? And then just, I don't know, the supplements and the tests, everything from Western medicine to shamans just added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm just one of those people where I just have to keep going down the rabbit hole to try to figure it out. And it's turned into this, great opportunity to share my story, share my research, share my products with the world.
I love it. And I feel like a lot of my listeners are going to relate to that. People don't, I always say, people don't just go out and say one day, I'm going to eat only meat. That sounds like a fabulous idea. A lot of people are very sick. That's where I was, the horrible IBS, and I can relate with the gas. I've spent so many nights sleeping out on the couch. Just because I didn't want to be in the room with my husband, because I was like, I'm going to keep you up all night. It's probably going to smell really bad. And yeah, just pain after every single meal. And so I feel like a lot of my listeners are right there with you, and and have spent a lot of money, have done so many tests to just try to figure out what's going on. And the doctor will tell them, oh, what you eat's no big deal. It's fine. You don't need to worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad.
It is sad. So you did specific carbohydrate diet, and then you said, you know what, I don't necessarily want to do this forever. How did you come across this whole stomach acid, enzymes, kind of where you are now? How did all of that evolve?
Pretty early on, because I don't enjoy restriction at all. I have a big hedonist as part of my makeup as a human, and so I've struggled with overeating and emotional eating throughout my life, and I was kind of raised in this household where if you did good things, you got sugar, and so when I had to go down to like no processed anything, no eating out, I wasn't even going to eat a steak at a restaurant like a carnivore might.
Yeah, because the oils and
Yeah, so it was like so strict about salt and pepper only and all these things. And I didn't like it. I just felt restricted. I wanted more. And I was also angry. Like, why me? Like, why can't I eat pizza? Or why do I have to make all my meals? I'm just looking around at like 99% of humans. At least that's what it felt like back then. Why do they get to do normal things and I have to spend so many extra hours shopping and prepping and cooking and all these extra dollars? And so again, it's just my nature I'm like one of those like dogs going after the sand crabs. I just can't stop asking why. And one of the first questions was what's stopping me from having all of my gas and bloating go away? And what's, even when I'm just eating like steak, like pureed carrots, cooked pureed carrots and like cucumber, like why am I still having alternating diarrhea every once in a while? And why some gas every once in a while? And then that sort of led me into the bowels of the forums back in 2010. And I found this Olympic trainer guy who said that he would start all of his athletes on betaine HCl for low stomach acid. And he said that the majority of his Olympic athletes, one of the things that they weren't getting is enough protein. And if you don't have enough protein, you can't be an amazing Olympian. And so he would start with their digestion. And this at the time was like, okay, great. Like I still kind of thought I might be an athlete, and I wanted to be, performance and look good and be active and all those things. So I just started buying stuff and trying stuff. And I tried the HCl challenge back then, and immediately I had an improvement, like within days. Like I call it like a light switch. Like there's some supplements you take, like vitamin D or vitamin C. And I mean, in the long run, we can test for these things and we know they're doing something, but like you don't feel it. You don't take one pill and be like, oh, that vitamin D is really kicking in. It's not like caffeine or something. Well, when you take a stomach acid supplement that has a lot of betaine HCl, you feel it. Like you either need it or you don't. And if you don't, it's not for you. But if you do need it, you're going to start feeling different, like within a week. And that's what kind of got me hooked. And again, it was just another one of those almost instant feedback things where like, wow, there's way more power here in my body than what I knew. And there's way more power in the mechanics of digestion. And what if the assumptions I've made about my body are incorrect? Meaning, maybe I assumed that my body was capable of doing what it should, quote unquote, be able to do, and it's not. It's missing the precondition to be able to digest foods like stomach acid. And when I started to ask the question, like, what assumptions do I have about digestion? What assumptions do doctors have about digestion? And let's dig into these. Do these matter for me? And the answer for me was yes. And the answer for what I found, the majority of people who have IBS is yes. Or any chronic condition for that matter, because some people don't identify with having digestive issues, but they have autoimmunity or osteoporosis, or like some other thing that they consider as their biggest issue that they might be listening today for.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the HCL challenge. If you would kind of go over that briefly for people who are not really sure what that is.
Yeah, so the stomach, I think, is one of the most amazing and overlooked organs in our body. Like, I mean, it's like this muscly sac that has the capacity to drop below the strength of battery acid. So pH is in a scale from 0 being like the most acidic thing in the world, 7 is neutral, and 14 is a base. And so battery acid somewhere between like a 1.5 to 2.5, depending on what you want to call it. And our stomach, after every meal, should be dropping down to under 2, somewhere between 1 and 2 pH. So that's like inside of us. Like, we eat this food, the stomach makes, in response to what we eat, it makes stomach acid, which is full of pepsin, which is an enzyme. It's full of gastric juice or this acid, and it's full of intrinsic factor, which is part of B12 absorption. And it basically unfolds proteins. So proteins are kind of like these balls, and you hear about peptides and things like that. Like, they're better for your digestion. They're easier for our digest. A peptide is when you unfold the protein, and then something like pepsin or other enzymes come in and cut them all up in these little chunks, and then we can just absorb them. Well, if your stomach acid is low and you're eating a steak and you're like, man, that steak just sits in me, like, I feel so full for so long, I burp a lot, I might fart a lot. Basically, those chunks of meat, those proteins, aren't being unfolded. And so the pepsin and all the other proteases are like attacking something from the outside, but really they need to be like cutting it at these individual bonds. And so to do an HCL challenge, basically what you're doing is you're taking a supplement that has powdered HCl in it, or acid, and you're trying to correct your stomach acid level to the strength of which it needs to unfold those proteins. And typically, since there's no real good test on what your ideal dose is, you keep escalating in the number of pills you take. At some point, you'll either feel just like instant relief. You'll be like, wow, like, I just ate, for a carnivore, like, I just ate like a 12-ounce steak, and this is great. Like, I feel good. Like, let's go out for a walk or something like that. Like, whatever your normal experience is, it's better. If you go too high on the HCL challenge, which is how it's typically recommended, you will have some sort of heat or burning sensation, which is basically too much acid. You can take a little baking soda, it'll neutralize it. Again, your stomach's super strong. It's totally protected. It's not a big deal. Or you'll experience loose stools and diarrhea. Because again, stomach acid is like hormones. It's like almost everything in the body. Too much is bad and too little is bad. We want right in the middle.
Got it.
Yeah.
And do you think, I mean, what I hear is that we're being told that we have too much stomach acid, but it's usually the opposite. That's kind of what I've heard from different experts.
Yeah. The saying that marketers ruin everything is totally true. And the pharmaceutical companies, when they were allowed to market to the public back in like 94 or 1996, whenever that legally was changed, they were launching PPIs or various types of acid reducing medications. And they made it seem that we all have too high of acid. And if you've ever had heartburn or acid reflux, which I've had plenty of, I mean, it feels like too much acid. I mean, like, to try to convince a human that, like, look, I know that it feels like your mouth is burning or your throat's burning or your heart's burning. It's not that. It's actually too low. It's not logical. But what is typically happening is that meat is fermenting in your stomach, causing gas, because fermentation, the byproduct of bacteria fermenting, is gas. That gas expands your stomach and pushes open the valve to your esophagus. And then that valve is open. So now acid is coming out and hot gas is coming out. And so there's doctors like Dr. Jonathan Wright and Dr. Stephen Sandberg Lewis, who are sort of leading integrative guys and naturopathic doctors who have these specialized machines in their offices where they can actually test someone's stomach acid. But what they report is somewhere between 70 and 80% of somebody who's complaining of heartburn or IBS, when they test them using these specialized tests, where they like drop a capsule into your stomach and they actually measure your response to food or to some sort of base or something, 75 or 70 to 80% of them actually do have low acid, and the other 20 to 30% are fine. So it's not universal. And I think that's part of the story that if you're listening to this podcast, you already know that the story of health and the story of diet and lifestyle it's much more nuanced and it's much more individualized than a commercial on the internet these days or TV is going to tell you.
Got it. So you think a lot of people with food intolerances and IBS and just these issues that they're having, maybe even beyond that with the joint pain and inflammation, a lot of that goes back to that low stomach acid?
I do. And the reason why is, again, a very underappreciated assumption. And that is that the rest of your digestive tract is capable of functioning properly from a mechanistic or a mechanical way. And what we know from science is that the majority of the timing of the rest of your stomach or the rest of your digestion starts with the pH of your stomach acid when it mixes with the food and then dumps into the small intestine. So meaning that if you're too fast, you're more of a diarrhea type, or you're too slow, you're more of a constipation type. If your stomach acid is setting the wrong timer, basically it's like a timer in a way. Now there's other hormones and there's other feedback loops that go into this, but the majority is this pH of this mixture that's jumping in. If that timer's too high or too low, the rest of the train is already off the schedule. Like when it's going to go through you, everything's going to be different than what it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to work. Not only that, but the types of particles of food that's left over may provide the opportunity, which is what we see a lot in SIBO. We see an overgrowth in the small intestine where we don't want it. Well, in order to have an overgrowth, you have to have food to be eaten. If you have stomach acid that's low and you're not breaking apart those foods, whether they're, cell walls from a plant or protein structures or fats, you're giving nature more to work with, more food to break down, because we can't absorb it as fast as we need to through the villi and the small intestine. And so I think that's why you often find a major association between things like SIBO and leaky gut and all these other preconditions to autoimmunity a lot of the times, is that you're almost like you're just like lobbing peanut butter onto the sidewalk in front of your house. Like if you throw extra food out there, nature shows up, ants and birds and dogs and who knows. And so if your stomach acid's off from the beginning, not only are you making things harder in the stomach and whatnot, but you're sort of setting up timing issues all the way down the chain to your colon. And you're also providing the conditions for an overgrowth or a dysbiotic microbiome.
Got it. So a lot of people I know that watch me and watch this listen to the podcast also, because it's video audio. A lot of them do have SIBO and definitely have leaky gut. And I've talked a lot about probiotics and had some experts on. So how is what you offer different than the probiotics? And I will say I've had people, since I talk about probiotics a little bit and more about gut health, I'll have people say, probiotics were a disaster for me. It was horrible. And what my real problem was more of a stomach acid issue. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk around that a little bit for people who, maybe probiotics aren't the right course of action for them up front. Maybe this is something else they need to work on first.
Yeah, 100%. So, so my college education was in electrical engineering. I did do some functional medicine certifications with the Kalish Institute and some advanced training with some other naturopathic GI schools. And like when I saw people one-on-one and when I consulted with them, one of the first things I would always do if someone's like really struggling is stop whatever probiotic they're on and whatever fermented food they were eating.
Mm.
And the reason that I did this is that because in my head, we have to get the assumptions working correctly. We have to get the mechanical nature of the digestive tract working first, because that's what actually builds the scaffolding, if you will, to have a healthy microbiome, to have a healthy gut. And if you are banged up, if you have like an inflamed Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, leaky gut, diverticulitis, if you're having these things, we can mostly assume, I mean, it's not proven, that you're going to have issues with leaky gut and you're going to have dysbiotic microbiome.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes, the answer to a conflict is not to throw more military forces into the middle of a conflict, right? Sometimes the answer is to pull back and see what are the conditions that are creating this conflict. And so for some people who are pretty banged up or very sensitive individuals, adding more bacteria into the system is not the first step that I believe is right. I think the first step is to get the mechanical nature of the food you're eating broken down such that the preconditions for a healthy microbiome, for a healthy gut wall, for a healthy mucosal layer are in place. Because otherwise you're taking this little seed every day of probiotic or these little bites of fermented food, but everything else you're putting in your body all day long is being malabsorbed and providing the right conditions for dysbiosis. And so to me, it's just like, do you want to do the 20% or do you want to handle the 80% of the issue? And to me, 80% of the issue is, can you mechanically break down the food you eat and either absorb it or get rid of it? Because that's the first step of the gut. Without that, we do actually wither away and die. I mean, that is malabsorption, that is nutrient loss, that is everything that happens in old age. And so my preference is to start with stomach acid first, because it's at the top of the chain. And then my second preference is to go to enzymes. Make sure that your pancreatic, your brush border enzymes are working correctly. And then we can kind of drive into prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, or short chain fatty acids. Because that's, again, sort of the nature, just top to bottom of how digestion works.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to bring you on, is because I feel like I've been in this rabbit hole of the probiotics, but a lot of people are not ready for those. And I see that if people try to introduce those too soon, especially if you're sensitive enough to be on a carnivore diet and you're benefiting from that, it can cause more issues. I had a friend of mine told me that she started probiotics and it caused SIBO for her. I was like, oh no. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that could have actually happened. Yeah. She it wasn't on my advice. Thank God that she did this. She was doing it on her own, but people just don't understand that, how this whole process works. I think it's so important.
Yeah. And again, I'm not anti-probiotic, but I'm just saying that I think there's an order of operations to optimize or rebuild a human that's not, their digestion's not working properly. And it'd be like me, like, I'm out of gas, but you have 4 flat tires. Like, there's an order of operations to how you drive a car. Like, you have to be able to roll the tires before the gas even matters.
Right.
And so to me, probiotics are super powerful. I take them, and I love some of the cool new research that's coming out. And they can be, some people have transformative experiences on them. But a lot of people can be harmed if their body's not ready for them. And
Yeah.
I think that goes back to the HCl and the enzymes to begin with.
Yeah.
And then
So you would recommend people start with questions on HCl and the enzymes, the difference of, and wanted to get in that a little bit, but people start with HCl alone, or can they do HCl and enzymes at the same time? And kind of how would someone actually apply that?
yeah, I mean, so look, I work with, and I typically educate to some of the sickest people
Mm.
in the world. Like, you don't make it to my website, thehealthygut.com, until you've gone through anybody that says doctor something in front of their name, or
Right.
WebMD or something. And so the individuals that I am typically trying to help through email, or that are buying our products, have been through a lot, and
Mm.
they've gone through a lot of different types of things. And so I would consider them sensitive, and most of them would consider them sensitive individuals. I'm a sensitive person. I kind of classify myself as sensitive, and I'm a tough case. Like most every doctor I've ever seen, or health consultant who doesn't even have a doctor, they would often strike me as like giving this look of like, oh shoot, I haven't seen anything like this yet.
Yeah,
know?
I've been there. Yeah.
So that's the sort of the population that I'm used to educating. And for them, they need to go slow, because they're typically the CEO of their health, and they're sort of making the decisions. And if they move too fast, they're not sure what changed, and they can have like a big setback. They could be up all night. They could be down for the count for days with some sort of autoimmune flare up, or mast cell, or histamine issue.
Mm.
So I typically say go one at a time, go one supplement at a time, because then you can also verify if you even need it. Because I'm also a pretty big believer that, like, if you don't need something, you might as well, not use that product, and reallocate that money towards a different type of supplement, or a different test, or a different doctor. And I'm not one of these people that thinks that you need to wait months to know if you need something. You should know in a weeks to 2 to 4 weeks. You should understand if a certain type of intervention is working for your body. If you're journaling, if you're paying attention. If you're not, if you're just kind of like taking the latest thing and not really tracking anything, then cool, that's a different type of case. But for somebody who's like pretty ferocious about this, and they're like, I'm going to figure this out, I do recommend starting with HCL Guard. That's our HCL. It's sort of an improved version of the various stomach acid HCL products. But if you already have some HCL at your house, or if you, there's a pharmacy around the corner and you want to start later today, go grab some and do an HCL challenge. And, you can just Google that. There's tons of, it's all the same. Basically, you just start with one pill per meal, and you work up and you work down.
Would you take it at the beginning of the meal or at the end of the meal, or during?
So yeah, ideally it's like right at the beginning, or kind of during, but it's, some people are so sensitive that timing does matter.
Yeah.
80% of people, timing's not going to matter as long as you swallow it right after your meal.
Got it.
Most of the time I take all my pills together at the end of the meal. I don't try to idealize them before and after and all these time frames, but I'm not sensitive enough that matters. I've tested it. Some people in our Facebook group, we have a very active Facebook group for all of our customers, and I'm in there, and we have some health coaches on my team are in there, and they have like profound experiences if they take the HCL before the meal versus after the meal. So I do recommend you start taking it before the meal, and then just go up one pill at a time, whatever product you're on, our product included. And at some point you'll have that heat burning diarrhea thing, which is not pleasant. And I'm sorry, but fixing your health these days is not a pleasant thing. You got to be willing to take some risks. But when you find that, it's amazing. And if it's not for you, you'll know in the first pill. Like, you'll eat your meal and you'll be like, wow, this does not feel right. This doesn't feel good. So you can take some baking soda, just a teaspoon of baking soda, a little bit of water. It'll nullify that. And, that's a test down. You sort of ruled out a really big component to unlocking your digestion. So that's where I tell people to start. And then I move them into a proper enzyme supplement, making sure they're covering all their enzyme bases, because that's another massive rabbit hole around setting up the conditions to actually get the nutrients you're eating. Like imagine if you're buying grass-fed ribeye steaks at $20 a pound,
Right.
and you're only getting 50% of that into
Yeah, I
your
feel like
body.
that's a massive problem for people. I mean, really big problem for people because they came to the carnivore diet not absorbing food and they're still doing it and they're still not absorbing food. So yeah, that's where the enzymes would come in.
Yeah. I mean, the stomach acid would unfold it. It would sort
Hmm.
of like take your chunks of meat and unfold it. And again, people wonder, like, does chewing really matter? Like
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of people will say, like, oh, slow down, chew your food. Well, I think it's really helpful for people to understand how their body works. Um, Chewing is what makes those protein balls smaller. So if you
Mm.
have low stomach acid and then you don't chew very much, now you have these big balls of
Yeah.
protein. And now your stomach has to, break apart this much bigger structure for your body to absorb it. And so that is why chewing and slowing down and doing those steps that in the Western world we're pretty bad at least I'm pretty bad at, like staying
Yeah.
off my phone, saying a little
Yes.
prayer, some gratitude, and like being super present. I'm as guilty as anybody at failing to do that. But there's a cost to that, and it costs more stomach acid.
Mm.
Um, then when we drop down into the small intestine, we are met with pancreatic enzymes, we're met with bile, um, we are met with, and then brush border enzymes. And the brush border is your villi on your stomach or your small intestine. So they're little hairs. And those give off enzymes to help break down your food as well. If your villi are like blunted or cut off,
Mm.
that's the sort of gold standard diagnosis for celiac disease.
Mm.
But it's suggested that SIBO or any sort of other inflammation of the small intestine is going to impact those villi as well. Maybe they won't be as cut off as a celiac intestine will be, but if those little hairs are not able to release the brush border enzymes, you're going to lose out on a bunch of digestive issues, and you'll probably have a lot of carbohydrate problems. So that's one of the reasons why a specific carbohydrate diet works so well, an autoimmune paleo or
Hmm.
carnivore in a way, is when you eliminate or when you have brush border enzyme issues, you can't break down carbohydrate structures from polysaccharides or disaccharides down to mono. So one multi parts, two parts, one part. We can only absorb a one part sugar,
Mm.
a glucose or a fructose. And if your small intestine is just full of these carbohydrate chains that you can't break down because you don't have the right enzymes from your brush border, again, you're just throwing a bunch of food out there on the sidewalk for bacteria to bloom around and grow around. So that's one of the reasons why I think the carnivore diet works so well for so many people, and
Hmm.
why some strict elimination diets do so well, is because your brush border is so broken
Hmm.
that you can't process vegetables, you can't process carbohydrates, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I feel like a lot of people are, and they get to this place and they're like, well, I feel good doing this carnivore diet. Um, but they just say, well, I just can't digest fiber. I can never eat vegetables. I can never eat carbs again. I just can't digest them. And that's another reason why I'm like, let's talk more about this. Why? Why can't you digest fiber? Why can't you digest carbohydrate? I mean, if you want to do carnivore forever, if you want to do keto forever, cool, for if you have other reasons for that. But, your body should be able to do this. And the mechanism for that, I feel like it's what you're saying is really they just lack the enzymes to break everything down, really.
That's my hypothesis.
Yeah.
So it's either a pancreatic issue or a
Mm.
brush border or both. And um, yeah, I mean, look, I think all tools or all diets are different types of tools.
Mhm.
And I think
Yes.
if we look at historical data, we don't have any historical examples of an only carnivore
Mm-mm.
society or an only vegan society.
Nope.
So There's no such thing as all vegetarians or vegans. There's no such thing as all carnivores. So that means our body came equipped with the capacity to digest these foods. And some people might have the genetics and the injuries and the family history and the epigenetics to be more 80% plant, 20% animal. Some people might be 90% animal, 10% plant. But in general, being more towards the middle appears to be what the body was built for. And I believe that it's been my experience, like my personal experience, that like literally getting rid of carbohydrates, like stop that bloating. Like I stopped having to cry after every meal.
Yeah.
So it's been my experience that like going on a very strict elimination diet can be one of the most healing tools in the world, and that you can rebuild the body to tolerate or enjoy even the foods that used to make you sick. And so for me, it comes down to, can you process? It's not what we eat, it's what we're able to process.
Yes. And absorb.
Right. And so it doesn't matter if you eat grass-fed, holy grail, whatever diet. If you don't have the capacity to break that down with your stomach acid, your enzymes, your bile, it's not the right diet for you. It's not the right foods for you, or you need support in, because some people are going to react to every food. Like
Everything.
We have people in our group that, they were down to like 3 or 4 foods, and then like through stomach acid, enzymes, and short chain fatty acids, butyrate, like they're able to like, just keep doubling their diet, like the amount of foods they can tolerate over a short period of time, like 90 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you get the mechanisms there, like the capacity back, when you get the capacity to be digestively flexible, maybe that's a good term for it.
Yeah, I like it.
Then you can start to add to your diet if you'd like.
Yeah.
And I think that, you could have that brush border issue we just talked about. You could have the pancreatic enzymes. You could have a low pancreatic enzyme reserve because you've been chronically ill for a lot of your life. You could be older. You could be 50, 60, 70 and beyond. And unfortunately, all the science at this point suggests that your pancreatic enzymes function like your stem cells and your hormones. Basically, we get an allotted amount for life, and we're slowly like ticking down the capacity of that system. And you start crossing into your older age, or you're like me and you just beat up your body real good.
Yeah.
You're going to run out a little faster, and you might need support for a while, or the rest of your life. If you've gotten to that point, which that sucks, but it's much better than taking some sort of biologic drug or immunosuppressant or some other thing.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people that are kind of drawn to this, they have a lot of prior gut damage. They have a lot of damage that's been done from medications, alcohol, just lifestyle, stress, just a lot of assault to the gut. I was definitely there, years of, alcohol abuse, which I'm thankful I don't deal with that any longer, doing recovery and all that stuff for many years now, but antibiotics and just all these things. And we think, when we're in our 20s and 30s, we kind of think we're going to just get away with everything. And then it hits us, late 30s, 40, it's like, oh, wow. And some people sooner, especially if you're really ill as a child and had a lot of recurrent infections and issues like that, then it's like, I feel like that is where we see a lot of people that are just come to the diet, they want to fix, they want to heal, and then it doesn't happen with just the diet. And so we have to keep looking deeper of like, why, what else do we need for support?
Yeah. I mean, all those factors, was part of my experience as well. And I think they're a part of a lot of the Western world, and especially people who are trying to further their life or further their family. They're working long hours, or they're trying to raise 3 kids or something like that. Like, I mean, that's a lot of stress. And there's a lot of ways in which we can deplete our bodies. And there's certain things like magnesium. Like, I mean, I'm sure people have heard of magnesium and how it's essential for health.
Yes.
Well, Enzymes are the exact same thing. Like they're literally, it's essential for health. Like, without it, a lot of your body can't function. Without it, you can't absorb the nutrients from your food. And so being low in enzymes is a critical issue, a very critical issue.
Yeah, speaking of the minerals and magnesium, I've got some other people coming on where we're doing some hair mineral testing, and I'm all into that. That's my newest rabbit hole, is the hair tissue mineral and playing around with all that. But if your gut is a mess, kind of supplementing with a lot of minerals and trying to fix that stuff is going to be a lot more difficult, right?
I mean, yes. The answer is yes. Like, uh, we know that not everybody absorbs what they put in their mouth. So like if the
Right.
bottle says 500 milligrams of calcium or magnesium or something, different bodies will absorb more of that 500 and less of that 500.
Mm.
And so the more banged up your gut is, the less of that 500 you're going to be able to actually absorb. And so the more you might need.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of this downward spiral that really sucks, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, it does. Because you have to kind of get in there and stop it and then rebuild from it. And normally, putting that intervention in to stop it costs usually a lot of pills and some time. But yeah, like you need stomach acid to liberate the minerals from the various types of food structures. And then you need the enzymes as well to begin to liberate them and make them freely available for absorption inside the gut. And, here's the kicker about the pancreatic enzymes, which are so important. Pancreatic enzymes are mostly pepsin, or not pepsin, but protease, which is a protein enzyme, lipase, which is a fat enzyme, and then amylase, which is a carbohydrate enzyme. But the kicker is pancreatic enzymes only work really well between 7 and 9 on the pH scale. Remember I said the way that the stomach acid dumps and how strong it is really matters. Well, right at the beginning of the small intestine, you dump bicarbonate or a base to raise the pH. If you raise it too high, you raise it to a 10 or 11, or if you don't raise it high enough, those enzymes are working at like 10 or 20% capacity. They work on like a bell curve of activity level. And between 7 and 9 is when they're getting all their work done. But if your pH is off in your small intestine, I mean, you're hardly going to get any work done at all. And so you're going to have, oily toilet, you're going to have, digestive, bloating, gas, all kinds of issues, even on a carnivore diet. Like I think a lot of
it's
people,
happening.
I think that's probably one of the biggest issues for the carnivores who are still having any sort of IBS related issues, whether it's too fast or too slow or too bloated. Either your body can't produce enough protease and lipase to catch up to this new diet. Because remember, it has to remember, it's not like you emailed a memo to the pancreas. It was like, okay, so tomorrow we're going straight steak. I'm going to need you to work all night to figure this out. That memo didn't get sent. And so it takes the body a few days to get up to speed if it's going to. Some bodies can't get back up to speed. And then also you have this pH issue where maybe it is cranking out. It's like, okay, I'm working all night. Here's all the protease and lipase you can handle. But then the pH is off and the stomach was like, oh, sorry, I was sleeping on the job. So it's not going to work. You can still have these issues. And so that's where anybody who's doing carnivore for more than a week probably and is experiencing those sort of toilet issues.
Yes. You
got an enzyme issue that it would be super helped by an appropriate enzyme product.
Got it. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, when Joe Rogan did carnivore and all these people that they do their carnivore challenge on YouTube. That's the number one thing that they all complain about is the diarrhea, the digestive stuff. And it's like, yeah, you can't, like you said, the body, you can't just write a memo and say, hey, we're going to just go straight beef and deal with it. You have to support it. Not to mention, I feel like a lot of people, I heard you speak on another podcast about gallbladder. There's so many people that either don't have a gallbladder or they have a ton of gallbladder sludge and they literally have no idea that they even have any gallbladder sludge until they start to eat a real high fat diet. So maybe they're just keto, but keto or carnivore, both of those, to be sustainable, you have to eat a real high fat diet. And so they get into these ways of eating, and all of a sudden they get the pain, the nausea, and it's like, yeah, that's your gallbladder. So what would you say with someone? I heard you say on another podcast, so tell me if I'm wrong here, that you're not a big fan of ox bile.
Yeah, I'm really not. My experience over the years is that ox bile can actually harm people. It's a bit
Mm,
like probiotics, so it's sort of really hit or miss on the dose you need, the brand you're buying from, including where that brand got the source from, because essentially you're absorbing, or you're taking in the dehydrated or spray dried version of beef or pork
mm,
tissue. And so,
yeah.
I mean, who knows how healthy that animal was, what its age was, and it definitely changes per batch of product.
Yeah.
So, any brand supplement that you buy in this month could be totally different animals and totally different location in the world where you got it from, by month, by like November of this year. And so I just find the variation in the products is extreme. And I find that the capacity for it to always be helpful is too low for my recommendation. So
Mm,
like, like I'm just one of those people where I can't make a recommendation unless I have like a 50 plus or more chance of it being a good idea for you. I'm not a big fan of like low frequency or low outcome possibilities. And
mm,
so for me, ox bile just seems like one of these things where there's too many variables and it's too low of a good outcome. Now, I know a lot of people use it, but what I've seen is that if you have the appropriate enzyme product, you
mm.
can eliminate ox bile from your supplement regime. And also, if you do need some detoxification capacity. So like if you're low in glutathione and or your liver's, you have like fatty liver, or you have like various types of liver backup issues, then maybe ox bile is a bridge until you sort of improve that whole detoxification unit of,
Yeah. The liver kind of adapts, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so, but yeah, and I didn't get enough chance to find the research, but there is some debate between whether the bile from our bodies is the same as the bile from animals, meaning
Mm,
do they work the same way? And there's some pretty solid debate on that. I wasn't able to pull the studies and get caught back up on it for this podcast, but that is just I don't think that that's the reason why you shouldn't use it. The reason why you shouldn't use it is like clinically, I just don't see it produce reliable, effective resolution of people's issues.
yeah.
And that's what I care most about.
Yeah. I mean, you can survive without a gallbladder. Your liver will eventually adapt and do the same thing, if essentially. But you think that enzymes would be adequate or helpful instead of going and using ox bile, which you're not really sure what you're getting.
Yeah, the right enzyme product, which we can dive into enzyme science and
Yeah.
the crazy sad state of enzyme manufacturing in this world these days. But the right either really strong pancreatic enzyme and or an activated vegetarian style microbe-based enzyme product, I think is a much more reliable way to handle the no gallbladder / gallbladder issue. And it's just what I've seen clinically work better for people.
Yeah, that's what I was going to dive into next, is the difference between what you do, the products that you have versus what's out there. Cause you just go on Amazon and type in enzymes or type in HCl. And I heard you talk about your process and I was like, oh, wow, that's actually, that's actually pretty cool. So if you wouldn't mind just speaking on that a little bit for people who, I'm going to go on Amazon and just buy this and kind of hope it helps. How does that all work?
Yeah, so you can do the HCl challenge with any HCl out there that has more than, say, 400 milligrams per pill. Don't buy anything that has less than that per pill. Our HCl Guard product is different in that we also put a prokinetic in there. So part of, another whole hour of a podcast is your migrating motor complex and basically peristalsis and how you move food from your stomach through to the toilet. And when those waves and those muscle contractions are out of alignment or broken, that's basically SIBO. You're almost like you're going to have some sort of overgrowth, whether there's candida, some sort of yeast, SIBO, parasites, something. And so when you have, I mentioned that the pH of your stomach is partially what drives the behavior in the small intestine. That a lot of that's peristalsis, and so you can use things like prokinetics to improve that as well. And so if we have low stomach acid, we essentially assume we have low prokinetic capacity in the body. And so we put in ginger to help with that, some organic ginger, which has been found in the research studies to improve prokinetic capacity, and then DGL, because most people who have low stomach acid also have some mucosal damage, and so DGL helps with that. And then intrinsic factor, we're the only HCl product in the market that includes all three components of stomach acid, which I think is just crazy that nobody else is doing this. But if you have low stomach acid, you have low pepsin, and you have low intrinsic factor. And so our product includes all three of those.
Awesome.
So, and like I said, if you have some HCl lying around or something, you can quickly rule out whether HCl is a factor for you or not. Enzymes, the story is much more gray. It's significantly more complex of a science and of a product category. You have essentially division between the pancreatic enzymes, which we mentioned, and brush border enzymes. You want a product that includes both. Not all products include both, but I don't know of any way that anybody can reliably say, oh, your enzyme issue is brush border, but is it amylase, or is it the enzymes that break down the sugar molecules at the brush border? I don't know of a test for that. I don't think anybody does. So having a product that includes both is super important. If you're going to take a pancreatic, a pancreatin product, that's great, but buy some sort of brush border product to go along with it. And so you get into this issue where, okay, well, we want a product that has both. Well, normally you can't make a product that has part pancreatin and part veggie or micro-based enzymes. And so you get into this point where you end up with a microbe-based enzyme or a veggie enzyme. And so the issue is that a pancreatin or an enzyme that we make is called a whole enzyme, WHOLE. It's a enzyme plus a mineral cofactor together. And that mineral essentially turns it on or activates it. So for some people who take a pancreatic enzyme, pancreatin, they find a lot of relief, and that's great. They don't have a brush border issue, or maybe it's a small one. For other people, they take it, it doesn't work that well. And typically they'll switch to a brush border enzyme or a micro-based enzyme. Unfortunately, when we manufacture micro-based enzymes, they come out as what's called an apo enzyme, or basically just the enzyme without the mineral. Apo means without. So you have a strong enzyme, but it doesn't have its mineral to turn on. And so you're sort of rolling the dice in your body when you take a veggie-based enzyme without the mineral cofactors. And so the cheapest stuff you'll find out there is a micro-based enzyme without any minerals, and probably low amount of it. And a lot of people will try these products because they're under $30 and be like, well, this didn't work for me. Like, and I don't have an enzyme issue, or enzymes don't work, or whatever. And that's not what you can say. You can say that product, that dose didn't work for you. You could try doubling, tripling, quadrupling. You could take like 8 of them, 100, or not 100, but like 10 or 15 of them, see if they do anything. Or you can buy a more expensive, more professional grade product that will include higher doses of those veggie enzymes and then the minerals along with it. And so that the companies know that. And I didn't understand this because this is a lifelong issue for myself. Like I've always been so upset that I couldn't figure out which enzyme was the best enzyme on the market. It drives me nuts. And so I decided I was going to figure this out. And it led me down this crazy rabbit hole through the manufacturers that make the enzymes to a PhD in Utah who has a patent on activating veggie enzymes. And so the cool thing about veggie enzymes is they're not as pH dependent. So they're not like stuck between 7 and 9. They can work from 2 to 11 or 12. And so the reason why having a veggie enzyme is better is because you don't have to worry about the stomach acid component. So that's really nice. But then you have to worry about this mineral component. And so I ended up partnering with this guy who's got this patent on, essentially he sat there and he put like minerals in petri dishes with the enzymes, trying to figure out when are they most active. And so our product Colozyme is patent backed of these sort of veggie enzymes that we have pancreatic, we have brush water, all of them are dual strain and backed with the right mineral to be turned on. That's sort of the name Holozyme, sort of a play on Wholezyme. If you have a different enzyme at your house, like another really good brand, like a Enzymatica Digest Gold or some, more professional style brand, you'll notice that they have a little bit of minerals in them, like 20 milligrams or 40 milligrams. You'll notice on the back of our bottle, we always have like 140 or higher, depending on the dose of that bottle. And that's because the other people know that the patents are out there about how these enzymes work, but it costs a lot of extra money to build out the product that's completely turned on and activated. And so that's what our product is. It's a full spectrum, from pancreatic to brush water, and then high dose with the mineral activation. And I think that's why most people just switch to us and then they don't switch back. And I didn't believe it. I thought it was all just a strength issue. I thought you could just flip the bottle over and compare like, okay, well, this one has 100,000 units of protease. This one has 150,000 units of protease. Clearly that one's going to be better, right? Even if it costs more, it's got more of units, numbers on it, therefore it's better. And that's just not the case. The type of enzyme where it comes from and if it's activated is a massive issue. And that's sort of like the untold story or the underbelly of the enzyme world. Hey, look, you don't have to believe me. I'm just some crazy guy who was mad about this stuff and wanted to figure it out, which is why we offer a 60-day money back guarantee, because I feel like you should try it. You should test it for 7 to 14 days. Like I said, if you don't notice anything in 21 days, I mean, I'll give you your money back. Go find a product that works for you. I understand how much time and money it costs to get healthy. And if we're not contributing to that, then that means that your breakthrough is going to be found from a different source, which is something I'm super passionate about, is that you just don't stop trying to get better.
I agree. And you mentioned, I think a little earlier in the conversation, that you have Facebook groups or groups where you've got health coaches in there helping people. So is that additional? They would buy the products, then go in there and kind of get a little help in troubleshooting. How does that all work?
That's just a bonus as being a customer from our company. I just felt that, I think the other untold story is that we've talked about how if you could take a 500 milligram pill of magnesium, but maybe you're so banged up only 100 milligram gets in. And no one's, unless you've been through this or you've gone and you've seen like hundreds and thousands of people, you don't know this kind of stuff. And so I just felt like the reasonable thing to do is to try to give people as much support. I mean, we're not going to be your doctor. We can't give medical advice, but when it comes to using our products and finding your ideal dose, or even using other people's products, it doesn't, probiotics, prebiotics, whatever, magnesium. If we see an opportunity there with your symptoms and what you're trying, we'll do our best to, as a bonus, to try to help you get better results. And so, that's just a bonus, from being a healthy gut customer.
I love that. That's really cool. So you it's 3 products. Is that correct?
Yes. We also have a butyrate supplement or a postbiotic. It's called Tributyrin X. And we did create coupons for all the listeners.
Yep.
So,
I'll put those below
okay.
in the show notes so they can check those out. But so the butyrate one, that's really interesting because a lot of people in the keto and carnivore space say, oh, I can just eat butter and be in ketosis and get my butyrate that way. And I'm finding from my research that that's kind of bunk.
Yeah, I mean, I think the research studies will be coming out in the next few years that will debunk that.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, if you look at certain other elimination diets, like the FODMAP diet, there's a
Mhm.
decent body of research now showing that within 4 weeks, even potentially 2 weeks, it's already showing of removing FODMAP food. So that not even going full carnivore, but just
Right.
removing a lot of fermentable matter from your diet, butyrate production and short chain fatty acid production starts dropping off a cliff. And by the time you hit 4 weeks and 8 weeks, it becomes levels that you would consider dysbiotic, or what you find when you start to compare healthy individuals with IBS people in other studies.
Mm.
And so there is a major concern I have with these diets, that we are sort of in a way creating a dysbiotic short chain fatty acid situation. And I know Paul Saladino and some other people have
Mhm.
some cool ideas about fermentation of collagen and fermentation of amino acids and things like that. And I think, look, the body is amazing. It has
Mhm.
backup pathways for almost everything. And so my guess is some of that's going to prove true. But if you need a bucket of it, but you can only make a cup of it, you're just never going to eat. You're never going to be able to make as much that way. It's sort of like,
Yeah.
are you getting enough to continue to have great health over 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, 5 years? And I don't know that we know the answer to that. But I do know that if you're having leaky gut, if you have any sort of intestinal inflammation issues, histamine issues, diarrhea,
Yeah.
the research on butyrate at this point is astounding. It's so amazing what's coming out.
Yeah.
And what I've seen clinically is that it's way more powerful than prebiotics and postbiotics, or prebiotics and probiotics. Not that both of those aren't really important, because just to simplify real quick, a probiotic or a good bacteria eats a prebiotic or a fermentable piece of something, and then essentially poops out a postbiotic is a good way to
Right.
remember it. So if you're supplementing with a prebiotic, you're trying to create more butyrate or more short chain fatty acids in a
Mhm.
way. If you're supplementing with probiotics, you're trying to create better conditions for better immune health and probably better short chain fatty acid production. Then at some level, whether you just want to be straight ketotic or carnivore, or you're just so banged up you can't stop that spiral downward, you're
Mm.
going to have to just go with a butyrate supplement, is what I've
Got
seen.
it.
And there's some really cool research coming out about supplemental butyrate helping with ketone production and
Interesting.
being better than MCT oil, leucine, and some other, theorized alternatives there.
Wow, it's fascinating. It's always so interesting to learn this stuff. And we get in this part of my whole podcast, and why I started an actual podcast was that I really want to encourage people to kind of get out of the echo chamber. If you go, my account kind of got big on Instagram, and then I started my YouTube channel kind of just as this blog, like diary, and then people were really interested in it. So I kept documenting everything. And now I'm at this point, and I'm like, okay, guys, this is the next step, is that we leave the safe space of like the keto carnivore world and listen to other people who know what they're talking about. And I know Paul, Dr. Saladino, been in person with him before. I know him, and he's adding foods back in now, and he's taken a lot of flack from inside the community about the fact that he's adding foods back in. But we can't just live in this little echo chamber and always just think that what we're doing is great if a lot of people are having problems. And that's why I started. Another reason I started this is because I'm getting the people who have been on carnivore for a year and still have diarrhea. They're not able to lose weight. They're having histamine issues, maybe for the first time, and they're really bad. And it's like, okay, guys, this is not just a coincidence. We have to continue to look deeper. So this has been such an awesome conversation. And like I said, I'll link all the products below. And that's so cool that they could also just be a part of your group, I think, when they're trying to troubleshoot and figure out how to take these products as well.
Yeah, and we did build some links so that we can say those. And look, I basically gave you guys a hopefully a decent deal, $15 off any purchase and free US shipping for all 3 products. You just have to go to healthygut.com/CHCL, C holozyme, or CTX. And so that's each one of those products. Based on the show and everything, we can't do it in a way where you can add them all to your cart, but you can use each one of those links and use
Separately.
the $15 off coupon and free shipping for each one of the products. And again, we offer a 60-day money-back guarantee. We offer the Facebook group. The goal is to get you feeling better. And I know that usually you need a little guidance for that. And at the end of the day, our products are more money than your standard stuff that you're going to find on the web. And that's because it's professional grade, it's doctor grade. And I only make the best product in each category if I'm going to make something. So hopefully the discount, the guarantee, sort of the information I've shared today helps alleviate the risk or the stress of giving it a shot. Because I do believe in the healing power of food, like super big, but I also believe in like the super healing power of supplements at the right times for individuals. And together the two can be profound.
Definitely. And I'm going to start taking these. I think mine are going to show up today. So I'm going to start experimenting with some of these too. I'm excited to kind of see what happens. So I will keep you guys updated on that also. So where can people
maybe we can do a
follow
round
up?
2. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that
Okay.
because I definitely would love that because I'm still kind of troubleshooting this gut thing and adding foods back in and figuring that whole thing out. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there was a bit of an ice storm that slowed down our
Oh yeah.
shipping.
Oh
So
yeah. I
sorry
was
about
telling
that.
your assistant, my husband, he works for a lab and the lab is based out of Texas and their generator didn't even have gas in it. So we have all these people in Atlanta rushing their samples to Texas and nobody's there. So it was a headache for everybody for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, sending blessings to everybody that's
Yeah.
affected with the Texas ice storms.
Oof.
And I mean, if you want to check out more of my work, you can go to healthygut.com. But also, check out healthygut.com/CHCL. HCL, been talking too much. C holozyme, so /C holozyme, and then healthygut.com/CTX. And those will get you the information there about each product, the labels, science behind it, and the discount codes.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'll put that in the show notes for everybody on YouTube and on the podcast as well, whatever platform you're listening on. And thanks again for coming on, Stephen. It's been really awesome to meet you. And I'm excited to do a part 2 for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.